There was this 11-year study with 207 of the largest companies in the US, which showed that companies with good culture, their stock price grew by 901%.
Whoa. Peter Drucker said it the best. Culture eats strategy for breakfast every single day.
One of the key indicators of good culture within a company is how fast truth travels within the organization.
Steve Jobs, the lone genius, did something extremely unorthodox. He got people from hardware, software, design to sit together. He made them to collaborate, gave them a single mission, build the future, and the result was...
Two founders walk into with Satish Manchikanti and Ajit Sivaram. Execution is not a hustle. When you grow people, you grow everything. Two founders walk into.
Let me ask you something. When was the last time someone on your team told you a hard truth before it became a crisis? Not after the deadline was blown, not after the customer complained, not in the postmortem, but early, when it was still uncomfortable, still fixable, still a worry in somebody's Excel sheet. If you're struggling to remember, you don't have a performance problem, you have a culture problem that's much deeper. Here's what most leaders miss. Culture isn't the soft stuff. It's the operating system that determines whether the hard stuff actually works. You can have the best strategy in the world, but if your culture doesn't let truth travel fast, if it rewards politics over performance, if it makes people smaller instead of braver, none of it matters, because culture is what happens when you're not in the room. It's that invisible hand, that force that either accelerates everything you're trying to do or actually sabotages it. And here's the thing, you're shaping it whether you mean it or not. Every decision you make when it's expensive, every promise you either break or keep, every time you model a value or you compromise one, your team, your org is watching. And they're learning what's really true here in your team. That's what we're talking about today. Because if you get this right, everything else flows. And if you get this wrong, everything else is a fight. Culture is an interesting topic because it's almost like this intangible for people, right? They don't know how to build it. It is either there or not there. A great indicator we've found of knowing whether your organization has good culture, whether your leaders are building that culture actively, is to see how fast truth travels. And truth is, how fast good feedback travels, how fast negative feedback travels. Because the wider those pathways are and the more unobstructed those are, that is a sign of good culture. So the speed of truth is a great indicator. For a lot of companies, they don't see that. Like some of the greatest ideas stop because culture doesn't let them move forward. I can't question anyone else in my office.
Unfortunately, the problem is most companies have a very shallow view of what culture is. They see culture as something very soft. They see it as HR's job, or there's a employee engagement team, that it's about vibes and parties and posters. But culture is not soft. Culture is strategic. It's the invisible architecture. It decides how decisions are driven, how conflict is handled, defines how people collaborate. The important thing for us to remember is this, right? Peter Drucker said this. The important thing to remember is this, and I love this quote by Peter Drucker. Culture eats strategy for breakfast.
So culture is not intermittent fasting.
Yeah. And I'm a strong believer in it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because culture is not what's on the walls. Culture is what happens in the halls.
Whoa.
Right?
T-shirt right there, man.
Right there.
Take it and go.
If the culture doesn't allow you to collaborate, align, trust, make that truth travel, then what's the point of strategy? It's not going to work.
Yeah. And I love that because we've been sold this lie almost that culture is a Diwali party, or culture is, let's take the team out and go to a resort. That is absolutely not what building good culture is. There was this seminal study done, 11-year study of 207 of the largest companies across 22 industries in the US. And this was done by Cotter and Hesketh. And the idea was firms with adaptive, performance-enhancing cultures where people were living the values, stakeholders were balanced, where change was actually encouraged, all the things that build good culture, versus firms that didn't have that. And over 11 years, here's the results. Listen to this. The headline numbers was over an 11-year growth period. Revenue for the companies that had good culture grew by 682% versus 166. Stock price went up 901% for companies with good culture versus 74%.
Now you know how to invest. Go find companies with good culture.
Net income grew 756% versus 1%. There is no better indicator for the success of a company than the culture of a company over a long horizon. And it's incredible to find that companies with good culture outperformed their competitors. And we see this day in and day out, time after time. Because what is culture? Culture is made up of three things. There's artifacts and rituals, things you see on the wall, the rituals we practice. The second layer of culture is, what are these values? Like we call them espoused values you say you have. And the third is underlying assumptions. What are the beliefs people actually have in this country? So when there is a gap between beliefs and values, in that gap, culture fades. Bad culture is born. When what we believe doesn't line up with what we see on the wall, and all research shows that gap is a trust destroyer. That gap is a culture destroyer.
Ultra leaders understand that. Ultra leaders are able to see the culture they build is going to have a direct impact on collaboration. And they think very deeply about collaborating, because in today's world, it really matters and it's built on culture. Because when you think about the companies, they're almost built on this hero myth that there is this one genius, one superstar.
The Steve Jobs myth.
We tend to glorify that individual brilliance. But there's this MIT study which shows that the collective intelligence is far more better indicator of what happens than individual brilliance. When you think about 20th century, your performance dependent on what you do. Today, we live in a lot more complex work environment. And it's no more one person's work of art.
Yeah.
It's a team symphony. So collaboration is not a side skill. It's a core skill today. Yeah. And you cannot build that unless you really sort of understand how to build a great culture and values that people have a language to collaborate. Because again, you may think of collaboration as consensus, endless meetings, like diluted discussions and solutions and decisions. But what is collaboration? It's about aligning different interests and creating a shared value. And it's interesting that when I said lone genius, the person who comes to your mind is Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
So Steve Jobs did something very unorthodox in early 2000s. He formed this team, from hardware, software design, and he brought them together. And he gave them a single mission, single purpose to create future. Now you can imagine those different groups coming together with different agendas. The win looked very different for all of them, but they had to wrestle and really collaborate together. They had to stop playing zero-sum game and start playing positive-sum game and say, okay, what's the win-win here and how can we create that future together? They call this whole project Project Purple.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
And the result of that project is iPhone.
Wow.
So iPhone is not a result of one genius or one genius idea. It's a product of collaboration. And that's something we don't realize.
I love that. Like we glorify the Steve Jobs and have never heard of Project Purple.
Yeah.
Another interesting one, Johnny Ive, who was the design thinker of Apple, the designer.
Yeah.
Him and Steve worked so well together. I was listening to Johnny talk about how he got a team of some of the most incredibly talented designers, thinkers. He built this team of people from all different types of design schools, not just one. And he said the one ritual they followed as the team was every Friday they would have breakfast at someone's house together. And he said what that did was people showed up to serve others. And it was interesting to see as they opened up their home, they opened up their lives, that brought the team together. And that Friday morning breakfast became such an important ritual to them. Something like that creates belonging. Because you need to go from collaborating here, just working together, to I actually belong here. A question a lot of leaders don't even think about is, am I creating a team where people can belong? Am I creating an organization where people can belong? And where people feel connected, where people feel so deeply about? Because then people have that IKEA effect. They want to co-create. They want to own it. They're a part of it. And because belonging isn't just showing up to work, it's so much deeper than that. Satya Nadella did a really good job of it. He modeled vulnerability. He talked about his family, he talked about his child, shared a lot of the personal stories, did strategic reorientation of where Microsoft was heading when he joined.
In what a season.
Very authentically, genuinely said, hey, we failed in some areas, we're fixing it. And then co-created that future with everyone. To me, that's good collaboration. That's good belonging to that organization.
And he really changed the course of the company, the fabric of what Microsoft stood for and what it is today. And as you think about culture and collaboration, one thing that's very important for us to understand is it's such a strategic thing to do today is the work environment. We work in such metrics environment today where, it's not just about leading downwards or leading upwards. You really need to collaborate with so many people across geographies, across time zones, across verticals. And such a complex environment, collaboration has become such a critical thing. And unless a company builds that fabric and leaders know how to build that space where people can come and collaborate. HBR has this, the research where they have shown that in the last 20 years, the amount of collaborations teams had to do has gone up by 50%. It's become such a big part of their work. And ultra leaders are able to collaborate because they understand building culture, building values is important.
The magic of culture is how you actually build it. And one of the things we've seen is building rituals. Like we've learned from so many different organizations. Zappos they do gratitude rounds in their DA huddle. Such a great way to start. We do that. We start every meeting with good things. Zappos built this culture book and every year employees contribute to that, right? They build that culture book, which really celebrates company values. Spotify they call it squad rituals. And they start every sort of squad meeting or huddle with the question saying, how's your energy? I mean, those are huddle rituals. Then you have storytelling rituals like Airbnb does, where they start all of their all hands with stories of their hosts. It's so inspiring. Netflix does this whole thing where they talk about context, not control. All of their decision-making thinking they share across the board with people. So people understand why decisions are made. So powerful. And it's great to see companies actually integrate some of these. A big one, I don't know if you've heard of the concept of Ohana, which Salesforce sort of talks about a lot. It's this Hawaiian concept of family. And I know there's a lot of backlash of work is family, all of that. They actually have Ohana flows at their office where it's opened up like a non-profits. Like you and I did an event at the Salesforce office the other day, opened up to organizations beyond just Salesforce. And it's such a powerful message that you send to your entire team and organization that we're beyond just profit and numbers and creating more business. That's the power of good culture. And to us to see really intentionally building that is what good leadership teams do. If you can build good rituals, you build great culture.
Love that.
Culture is the heartbeat. Collaboration is the circulation. Think of it like a human system. The heartbeat sets the rhythm. Values are lived, not just laminated. Circulation carries truth, context, and commitment through every artery of the human body org, so work can actually breathe. When the pulse is weak, politics fill that gap and decisions starve for oxygen. When leaders model the way, telling the truth when it's costly, making space for dissent, pressure equalizes. People start performing cooperation and start actually practicing it. And that's when belonging stops being a slogan in the org and actually becomes something that is muscle memory. The quiet rituals, the daylight decisions, the we that holds under load. If you like engines better than anatomy, culture is the oil that actually kills friction. Hierarchy alone revs loud but burns out. Culture lets you turn that same horsepower into reliable speed. You feel it when cross-team handoffs click, when hard news moves fast, when teams borrow each other's talent. Great culture is seen and felt everywhere because it's how the work moves, safely, quickly, and together.